welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to look at ways to control your finances. So there's a couple things that you want to keep in mind when you're controlling your finance. You want to know your bank balance. You want to know what you spend. Don't buy on impulse. And make a budget and don't overspend. So you want to keep track of how much money you have coming in and also going out, and then make appropriate adjustments as needed. Here's a couple examples of how we can apply keeping track of finances. So Calvin isn't rich, but he gets by, and he loves sitting down for a latte at the Orlando Cat Cafe coffee shop. With tax and tip, he usually spends $5 on his large latte. He gets at least one a day on average, and about every 3 days he has a second one. He figures it's not such a big indulgence, is it? Assuming Calvin's monthly rent is $1,100, how many months' rent could he pay with his annual latte expenditures? So let's figure out, first of all, how much money he spends on lattes a year, okay? And we know that he gets one latte per day, and we'll assume there's 365 days in a year. So that means Calvin gets 365 lattes, but it also says that every 3 days he has a second one. So he has a second latte every third day. So that means, okay, there's 365 days in a year divided by 3. That gives me 365 divided by 3, 121 more lattes. So the total number of lattes a year would be 365 plus 121. So it's about 486 lattes per year, okay, total. And we know that there's $5, right? That's how much he spends on a large latte. And if he gets 486 of them, it's 486 times $5 for every latte. So the lattes cancel out and you get 486 times 5, so it's $2,430 per year on just lattes, right? And he spends $1,100 on his monthly rent. So if we compare his latte expense to the monthly rent expense, that's $2,430 divided by the $1,100. And 2,430 divided by 1,100 is about 2.2. So what that means is that like over a year, Calvin's latte habit could basically pay for more than 2 months of rent, right? So that doesn't mean he needs to cut back completely, but maybe reevaluate, especially if he is just getting by, right? And if you look at it in a longer term, in 10 years, he could actually save more than about $24,000, right? If you take the 2,430 and do a rough estimate, maybe round it to 2,400 times 10. So $24,000 is a lot, 10 years, especially if he's saving up, for something like a home or whatever it is, some other big purchase. So definitely it helps to look at finances and then make adjustments as needed, especially if you don't need a latte every day, or maybe you could even cut out the second latte every 3 days. Okay, let's look at another example here. And again, feel free to pause the videos as you're reading these problems. Cassidy has begun keeping her spending under better control, but she still can't fully pay off her credit card balance. She maintains an average monthly balance of about $1,100, and her card charges a 24% annual interest rate, which it bills at a rate of 2% per month. How much is she spending on credit card interest? So first we want to figure out what's the monthly interest that Cassidy is spending here. So monthly interest, it says that it's a rate of 2% per month. So we learned in the other section that 2% is 0.02, right? Every month. So it's 2% of how much? It's $1,100. So that comes out to 0.02 times 1,100, which is $22. Okay, so that's the monthly interest that she's gaining. Let's figure out what that is annually. So of course there's 12 months in a year. So her annual interest payment is, we're just going to take the $22 and multiply it by the 12 months, and it comes out to $264 a year. Okay, that's a big amount for someone that's on a tight budget. Okay. You can pause the video and you can try the next couple problems on your own, and then you can unpause it when you're ready to begin looking at understanding budget basics. Okay, so let's talk about budget basics. And by the way, a budget is just a way to keep track of how much money you have coming in and also going out, and then making adjustments as needed, right? So we need to understand some basics of that. So how would you even create a budget or keep track of a budget? First of all, you'd want to determine your average monthly income. So how much money are you bringing in? Then you'd want to know what your average monthly expenses are. Something else that you would want to do is you'd want to determine your net monthly, what's called your cash flow. And the way we would find the cash flow is we would just subtract the total income minus the total expenses. And then, of course, make adjustments as needed. Okay, let's take a look at an example. In addition to your monthly expenses, you have the following college expenses that you pay twice a year. $3,500 for your tuition each semester, $750 in student fees each semester, and $800 for textbooks each semester. How should you handle these expenses in computing your monthly budget? So first we want to figure out what's the total amount that you pay over the year, right? Okay, So we know that based on this problem, they tell us that you pay twice a year $3,500 for tuition, $750 for student fees each semester, and $800 for textbooks each semester. So to find the total, I'm going to take those three numbers, 3,500 plus 750 plus 800, and I'm just going to double it, which means multiply by 2. So I know the total amount paid over the year is about $10,100. Okay, so now what would be my total expenses on a monthly basis? So for that, I'll need to take, of course, the amount that I'm paid over the year and then divide that by 12. And it's going to come out to about, if we estimate, about $842. So that means that your average monthly expenses are a little less than $850. But not much, right? So you should probably put $850 per month into your expense list. This way you know that you need to set aside that much money minimum for your expenses. The next problem is quite long, so you definitely want to pause the video and read the problem a couple times so you know what's going on. Brianna is creating a budget. The expenses she pays monthly are $700 for rent, $120 for gas for her car, $140 for health insurance, $75 for auto insurance, $25 for renter's insurance, $110 for her cell phone, $100 for utilities, about $300 for groceries, and about $250 for entertainment, including eating out. In addition, over the entire year, she spends $12,000 for college expenses, about $1,000 on gifts for family and friends, and about $1,500 for vacations at spring and winter break, about $800 on clothes, and $600 in gifts to charity. Her income consists of a monthly after-tax paycheck of about $1,600 and a $3,000 scholarship that she receives at the beginning of the school year. Find her total monthly cash flow. So, in order to find the cash flow, right, we need to find Brianna's total income and then subtract her total expenses. Well, if you take a look, right, this all represents her expenses. So this is a lot of expenses over the course of the year. This small little amount here is related to the amount of money she receives as income. Okay, so let's first figure out her average monthly income. All right, so we're going to look at the orange. We know that she gets $1,600, right, in the form of a paycheck. Plus, she gets $3,000 at the beginning of the year. So let's take the $3,000 and divide by 12 so we know how much monthly, and then we'll just include that in the monthly income. So if I do that, it's $1,850. So it's $1,850. Okay, so that's her monthly income on average. Now let's get her average monthly expenses. So how much is she spending a month? Okay, well, there's a lot there, all in yellow. So we essentially want to add up all those numbers. And it comes out to about $1,820. Okay, that's her monthly expenses. She also has annual expenses, right? It says over the entire year. So that includes the $12,000, and that's for college expenses, plus $1,000 on gifts and $1,500 on vacation and $800 on clothes, and then $600 on charity. So if we add that up, it comes out to $15,900. That's her annual expenses. So what would her average annual expenses be? Well, we need to take the average monthly expenses, which are the $1,820. Plus, we need to figure out the average annual expenses. So I'm going to take the $15,900 and I'm going to divide that by 12, and that'll give me the average annual expenses. So 15,900 divided by 12 is 1,325. So now I'm going to add that on to here. And now I have her average annual expenses, which are $3,145. So if I want to find Brianna's cash flow, right, that's just equal to the monthly income minus the monthly expenses. And the monthly income is $1,850, and we said the monthly expenses were $3,145. So that comes out to a negative number. You've got negative $1,295. So what that implies is the negative means that Brianna is spending more than she's actually bringing in, right? Which is not good. So she really has a budget problem, and she definitely needs to make adjustments. And some of those adjustments might require difficult choices on her part. So it's very important to find out what your cash flow is, so you know what you can afford each month, and then make adjustments, right? We don't always have to make adjustments, but sometimes we do, and sometimes they're not easy. Here's a section I'd like you to pause the video and try on your own. And we're going to move down to insurance, which is something that affects everyone. So insurance is basically protection against unexpected crises, right? You've got some definitions, I think, that are important to go over. The overall cost of an insurance policy usually involves a combination of some of these following. So you've got the word premium. So if you have insurance, I'm sure you've seen, if you've read over your insurance terms, they mention the word premium. That's just the amount you pay to purchase the policy. Okay, they're usually paid once or twice a year. Sometimes you have to pay them more often. Like car insurance sometimes is usually twice a year. And then you also have a deductible. That's the amount you're personally responsible for before the insurance company pays anything. So like, for example, let's say you have auto insurance, right? So car insurance, and let's say the policy has $1,000 deductible for every incident that occurs. That means you have to pay the first $1,000 for any damages from the crash, and then after that, your insurance will kick in and pay for the rest. And then another term that's important is copayment, and usually that applies to health insurance. So that's the amount you pay each time you use a service that's covered by the insurance policy. So, for instance, like, if you go for dental insurance, you might have different co-payments based on the different procedures that are being done. So a cleaning is going to have a different co-payment than maybe like a cavity being filled or a root canal being done. Okay, for example, here's another example. If you pay a $50 co-payment for office visits, you'll pay $50 each time you visit the doctor's office on an insured visit. Okay. So suppose you have an accident and you end up in the emergency room, and afterwards you receive a $7,000 bill for your treatment. Fortunately, you have health insurance, but your policy has a $1,000 annual deductible. It has a $250 copayment for emergency room visits and pays only 80% of the remaining balance. How much will you pay out of pocket for the emergency room visit? Assume you haven't had any other medical expenses in the current year. Okay, so first of all, we learned that, with the term deductible, you have to pay that in full, right? Okay, so you've got the $1,000 deductible. That has to be paid in full. And it also says that your policy has a $250 copayment for emergency room visits. So you also have to pay the $250 copayment. So that's a total of $1,250, okay? So that's your share of the remaining balance, okay? So the total bill is just the $7,000, but you have to pay $1,250. So what's the remaining balance? The remaining balance is going to be the $7,000 minus the $1,250. And that leaves us with $5,750. Okay. So the insurance company pays 80% of that remaining balance. So we have to find 80% of the $5,750. Remember, you're still responsible for the $1,250. Okay. So 80%, if they're paying 80%, that means you have to pay 20%. So I just need to multiply 0.020 times 5,750. And that comes out to the $1,150. So you have to pay the $1,250 plus the $1,150. So the total, we'll call it out of pocket cost. This is what you owe. Is going to be the $1,250. That was from your deductible and your copay, plus the remaining after the insurance pays the 80%. So that leaves you with $1,150 more. So if we add that up, you pay $2,400 out of the $7,000 bill that you received. Okay, and that is it for this section. So the next section, we'll talk about simple interest and then compound interest in the section after that. So all very practical things. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'm happy to help. Have a great day.